José, muchas gracias y estaremos al tanto de si dicen alguna novedad. Mientras tanto, vamos a dar la bienvenida a nuestro siguiente invitado, un inversor internacional, Ross Gerber, President and CEO at Gerber Kawasaki Wealth and Investment Management. Good morning, Ross, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start talking about the current state of the market. Do you think the recovery rally that started at the end of 2022 can continue?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of positive potential because there's so much negative in the market already that anything positive that happens has been perceived as very good. And so, we recently went through a pretty, shocking banking failure, and the system seems to have held up, and that's created a little bit more confidence for people to buy stocks, and we're seeing stocks moving higher today, for example. But overall, with the Federal Reserve looking like they're done raising interest rates, that's ultimately positive for stocks because we see rates moving down over the next year, and that will support higher stock prices. So, this is a really big thing. Getting the Fed out of our lives and rising rates ending is very positive for equities.
This increase in rates ending, the 2-year yield was about 5% some weeks ago. Now we can see rates at almost 4%. Is the bond market saying something different than the Federal Reserve?
Absolutely, and this has been a big problem with the markets the entire time, which is the Fed has had to talk up interest rates, and we saw this with the 2-year rising all of last year, devastating stock prices. But the Fed was well behind the 2-year rate and raising rates because they've been reactive to lagging data information. And now we're seeing the 2-year dropping precipitously down to 4% while the Fed continues to raise interest rates to 5%. And the market's saying, look, the Fed is just going in the wrong direction, and ultimately they're going to be going down, and they'll probably be lowering rates fairly rapidly at some point this year. That's what the market is saying. So I think there's a big disconnect between what markets and the economy are really doing and the fact the Fed is operating 3 to 6 months behind what's reality.
And talking about the economy, Ross, this week we have GDP numbers coming out. The GDP now model from the Fed of Atlanta expects 3.2% growth during the first quarter of 2023. Do you think the US could avoid finally the recession?
Well, this is the big surprise for a lot of us. In Q4 we thought the economy was sort of like rolling over, and then it picked up in Q1. We had warm weather on the East Coast, and people went out and went shopping and spent some money, and jobs are strong still in the United States, and that surprised on the upside on the economy, but it also made investors fearing that the Fed was going to have to be even more aggressive. But now with the banking failures, really, if the Fed just stops raising rates, I think we will avoid a recession. And the Fed continues to raise rates into this, sort of perilous point in the economy, I think we'll definitely have a recession. So it's really, I think, an inflection point now. But with the banking crisis is in full force, and this sort of like, reassessment of the risks, I think it would be extremely ignorant for the Fed to raise rates again, and that I think bodes well for stock prices and the economy if we can get them out of our lives.
I agree. It's going to be funny how this inflection point resolves during the next month. I'm talking about individual companies. Some rumors are saying that Amazon wants to buy AMC. Do you think it's possible?
Yeah, I do think it's possible. Amazon is going all into the movie business, and they bought MGM Studios for a very high price, and their goal was to make movies to put in theaters, not just to build their streaming service. And they've spent so much money making content for their streaming service that hasn't made their money. They figured, hey, why not get into the theaters and try to make money? And because theater companies are trading at such low valuation, companies like Amazon, Netflix, Disney, Apple, they could pick up a theater company and if they're creative, really create a new way for people to enjoy content, not just with movies, but with shows, and build communities. And we think that the movie business will be much more successful and popular if prices were a little bit lower. People want to go out and they want to see movies in the theater. So it makes a lot of sense. AMC in particular is a troubled company. and it may not be the best of the companies to buy in the theater business, but it's certainly, I think, for sale and heavily indebted, and Amazon could get it real cheap. And if they have a great business plan, I think it's a really smart move for one of these companies to buy a theater chain.
Ross Gerber, President and CEO at Gerber Kawasaki Wealth and Investment Management, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Y nosotros